Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to talk about the 120S, or the M60 120S. This is a M60 chassis which has the M1A1 turret on top of it at 10.0 in the American tech tree. Now, going into this vehicle, I spaded a bunch of other M60s. The M60 TTS, we also gave a go at the CM11 and finished that one, and also the Rise, which was there too. And the unfortunate thing about the M60 platform is as it increases in BR, you really start to feel the mobility issues. You really start to understand why you don't see a lot of these on the battlefield. And also the fact that you have no armor, which creates some horrific situations too, especially at higher BRs. But these M60s keep going up in BR because they keep giving them mega rounds, or they keep giving them, some kind of thermal package to try and help them out at that BR. And it's up to you to basically play around the mobility and be able to do well with that. The 120S is exactly the same story. And because of that, it is horrific to play because it's at 10.0. This vehicle right now has pretty good matchmaking, because the meta BR is 10.3. I hardly saw any 10.7, I hardly saw any 11.0. A lot of them were actually 9.3 to 10.3, or 9.7 to 10.7, or sometimes 10.0 to 11.0. But mostly, it was around the 9.0, 9.3 bracket that I was playing against. And this vehicle felt awful because of that mobility issue. The problem with the 120S is they didn't upgrade the engine. So the engine is still the standard M60 engine, the 750 horsepower one, which has access to a transmission, which means it can only go max speed 48 and also reverse 8 kilometers an hour. And most of the time you're spading this thing, you won't be able to get it over 30 kilometers an hour. And that is the key problem with this. As somebody who's spaded a lot of the Abramses in this game, and put a lot of effort into them, and really enjoy them, the fact that you have one which is 0.3 BR lower than the standard Abrams, right? But it also lacks 30 kilometers an hour of reverse speed, and also it lacks about 30 kilometers an hour forward speed compared to it, really hurts, especially since the acceleration is completely different too. The 120S was horrific to spade. It was a terrible vehicle compared to many which are around it. And the sad thing is, you can't put it down in BR because of the armaments that they've put it next to. When researching this thing, there was a lot of people trying to tell me how to play this. Oh, well, you just got to go hull down, because you got an M1A1 turret, right? So just go hull down. Yeah, that doesn't work. The turret itself is mounted so high that, of course, you have the 70mm turret ring, which is completely exposed on this vehicle. And also, at the same time, this thing is taller than a standard Abrams. It is huge on the battlefield, so ever finding areas where you can actually just sit back, relax and fight limits you massively on where you can actually go on certain maps. And once you go to those areas on the certain maps, if there's a breakthrough in a different area, or if you need to maneuver to a different area, you can't because you're too slow. So you just have to fight it out where you're at. And sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. You do have a great gun depression on the gun. 10 degrees, which you need because you are so tall. Then you have a great reload, a max reload of 5 seconds, because the Abramses were just doing so badly in people's hands, they buffed its reload. So yeah, you have a 5-second reload on a 120, which is fantastic. You also have the M829A1 shell at rank 4 for some reason. But they basically just gave it this mega round to justify its BR. And the round is great. It works really well until it doesn't, especially against a lot of light targets. And, it's just one of those which doesn't always... It needs a capability to one-shot everything it touches, and that isn't what this round is. It also gets smoke grenades, laser rangefinder, all of these fantastic things later down in the modifications, which means the vast majority of the time when you're playing this thing, you're not going to have those things, and that absolutely sucks. For some reason, this vehicle gets Gen 2 thermals. Don't know why. The standard M1A1 gets Gen 1s, but for this one it gets Gen 2. Still doesn't have a commander's sight, which is something none of the Abrams have, once again. No idea why that is the case. And there are certain factors to this thing which just make it very annoying to be able to play. And one of them, as a person who spades vehicles, so I go from a stock configuration, so it has no mods, to spading it, and then that means getting all the mods. And then after that, I usually leave it alone. The 120S has one of the worst stock grinds in the game, right? You have absolutely no mobility. You have absolutely no mobility at all, even if you get all of the modifications. Once you get them all, you have half the mobility of the competition you're facing. So the only thing you can do is you can form a second line of defense. If the enemy breaks through the first line of defense, which is where all of your guys have got to while you're trundling along, then you can basically clean them up, hope that your guys come back, and for a counterattack to be able to take that area back. There was a lot of games where I ended up getting 5, 6, 7 kills because I was just stuck at the back because I couldn't get forward and the enemies kept pressing me over and over again. And, you know, put the gun to work and put a lot of the angles to work, and yeah, it worked great. But we weren't able to influence the map at all because we were too slow. And also, you are hoping that your teammates actually survive or actually do something in those scenarios. The last time I felt like this in a vehicle was when I played the Black Prince, where the Black Prince would turn up to the battlefield after the battle had finished. That's what it would do. It would, after the initial engagement, whoever had won, the Black Prince would trundle in and either get swarmed by enemies, or it would be able just to walk forward because there was nobody left. And the 120S does the same thing. And you do have the firepower in this to be able to deal with that swarm of enemies, but when you're put in a negative position to be able to deal with stuff, and they can also frontally pen you, the 2S38 is the bane of my existence of this thing, because it can just upper glacis you. It's just nuts. But yeah, because it's an M60 chassis, with no ERA or no extra stuff. So, you have to win all of those fights, right? You have to win all of those fights, but you just can't. And eventually you just die. So you can get a bunch of kills, but you just don't affect the game at all. And that is a sign of a vehicle which just sucks. I really despise vehicles like that. Think about like the rest of the vehicles of this BR for America. You have the AMBT, right? The AMBT, which is the event vehicle. This one has an upgraded engine, so you can actually mobilize around the place. You also have the CCVL, once again, very mobile and can play around it. The Bradley, same thing, not as mobile as some of the other ones, but does have the TOW 2s and also has scouting, so you can play around that with the Track RST. The Levad, incredibly mobile and also quite good at being an AA and a multi-role vehicle. And then the Striker, once again, very mobile with mods, and you can just do a lot of work with it. So yeah, you have all of this mobility around. And then you have the 120S, which can't move at all. Maybe as a second spawn, maybe that could work, but even then, you still lack the mobility to be useful. So it just really hurts to play this thing. One of the biggest issues with this is its mods as well. So you need all of its modifications to be able to be combat effective. The rank 4 modifications, there are 6 of them. A rank 2 and 1, there are 4 modifications, and a rank 3, there are also 4 modifications. This actually has set up on the vehicle, so rank 4 modifications are cheaper than rank 3 and 2 modifications. So it actually takes you longer, because of how the modifications are set up, to get to the modifications that you need to be useful in this machine. If they moved the laser rangefinder to rank 2, or if they moved the thermals to rank 3, it would actually be an easier grind for the vehicle to be able to get to where you need to get to. Because this vehicle doesn't really have any useless modifications, so therefore they don't lower any of the other ones. So to give you an example, okay? So if you have a look at, I don't know, the T72B 1989, same BR as the Abrams, right? Or the M60. It has access to ESS. It has access to a dozer blade. It has access to NVDs. All of these modifications are generally not very useful on the vehicle. But you know what they do by existing? What they do is they reduce the modification cost of the useful modifications that you need, right? And that is super useful. I've been playing the ZBDO4A. It has exactly the same thing. There is the different belts that you can research, the Scout UAV, of course, the airstrap modification, improved optics modification. All of these things, as additional mods, reduce the amount of RP that you need for the useful mods for the machine that you will use a lot. The 120S does not have a single mod that it doesn't rely on to do well, whether it's the aiming or adjustment of fire mod, which you need to be able to clatter people with the gun, otherwise it will just miss, or if you need, you know, the mobility mods. You need everything on this thing to be combat effective, and therefore it's very hard to grind through because getting to those rank 4 mods is really, really tough. And I just had an awful time in it. I don't know. I'm done with the M60 for now. I've spaded so many of them. The Magak 8 Hydra, the CM11, the TTS, and now this, the 120S. I feel like I've just been spading all of these M60 platforms, and I have exactly the same experience with every single one of them. When they start off, they are worthless because you cannot get to the battle in time, and everything else is just flying around while you're trying to react to what's going on. And whatever BR they're at, they all feel the same in their playstyle. And once you get the modifications, it becomes combat effective and it becomes okay. But overall, it still is not very good. The 120S, I ended with 78 battles, 54% win rates, the 138 ground kills, and 65 deaths. So basically a 2-to-1 KD. But the main thing that I noted while playing this thing was the survivability. There wasn't many matches where I actually lived through them, and it took me a long time to be able to get to the matches where I would actually. To give you a example of a vehicle we spaded recently, which does have very good survivability, the Leopard 2A7V. We had 71 battles and only died 37 times. So nearly half the time, just less than half the time, we're not dying in that thing, right? But in the 120S, we're pretty much dying every battle. And that really makes it hard to be able to do stuff with it. It was a tough grind, this one. I wouldn't recommend it, unfortunately. It can't go down in BR either because of the Mega Gun. If they removed its rounds and gave it some better ones, this could easily be a 9.3 vehicle, and I'm not even kidding. It's really, really crazy. As always, though, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.